attitude for the session. Look, I love stories. Stories is what connects us. And one of the things I do when I've been preparing for presentations lately is I try to avoid spelling grammar mistakes as much as possible. They're a little awkward, right? So I finish my deck, I upload it to my ChatGPT instance and say, did I miss anything, right? Are there any obvious errors, mistakes in this document? Please review and give me highlights slide by slide. Rough approximation of my prompt. So as speakers, when we got our decks, we were given images of recognized people instead of our own. Interestingly enough, ChatGPT believes I look like this, and it did not say that is the picture of Dwayne Johnson, not Mehmet Orun, or it believes that I can someday exercise and look this way. Moral of the story, we still need to embrace AI with a level of caution. Human intervention matters. But this is typically what I would look like, wearing a fedora or a cap. If we don't want to talk about data, you want to talk about dancing, Dickens, dapper styles, I'm here for you. What we're going to talk about in the next 35 to 40 minutes is a historical perspective on allure and complexities of AI. Then I'm going to provide you with some real perspectives, real steps you can take away on how you can plan your own AI initiative. The nice thing about this session is it actually lines up very nicely with Peter's, as well as some of the audience questions. Then we are going to talk about some high-level criteria to ensure your agents are successful. This is not a session I'm going to dive deep into what Agentic is. There is plenty of material out there. Rather, how to help AI, including agentic AI, be successful. And then I want to leave 10 minutes for us to have a real-life conversation with your questions. I've tried and experimented with a lot. There's more I don't know than I do know. I hope this will be a good use of your time. Now, to make this personal, however, I do need to know a little bit about you, so we're going to do some post-lunch exercise. Please raise your hand if you primarily associate your identity as a business person. Now raise your hand if you associate yourself as a technology person. Raise your hand if you raise your hand twice. Cool. Please raise your hand if you consider yourself an executive who's responsible for outcomes versus the doing. Please raise your hand if you're primarily doing versus the outcomes. It is after lunch, we're going to get to blood pumping. The last question, this is a technology agnostic event, but I can dive into different levels of that. How many of you work with Salesforce or Salesforce agnostic technologies? How many of you are looking for generic practices? Okay, this should speak to all of you. Thank you for that. Let's get started. I want to start by sharing something we actually built. So part of my responsibility is I'm the general manager and data strategist of a Salesforce partner, which means I need to worry about sales, pipeline reliability, where we spend money, right? Things that many of your organizations worry about. And one of the things we often wonder is, how good is the probability in the probability field? Oftentimes this is automatically calculated, people don't even bother changing it, and oftentimes people over-index on the accuracy of this. Now, I don't know if you can see it behind the screen or in the back, it says probability of close is 75%. What if there was a data-driven way to say opportunity risk exposure was 100%, indicating I don't think you're going to close this amount by this date? Could this be helpful? I'm hearing maybe. Well, who's the person that said maybe, and why would it not be helpful potentially?
One, you're failing to look at a number of different compound factors that would influence that. Think in terms of the dollar amount and timeliness. So, if you set the dollar amount low enough, you potentially increase your probability of close, but you impact your profitability and your cost of sale. At the same time, I could then lengthen the sales cycle and extend it for 3 years, which potentially allows me to close, but not in a reasonable time frame. So without understanding the contextual understanding of all the data associated with it, it's meaningless to know if it's going to close or not. Plus, at the same time, what are the various factors that lead to a close? Without understanding what they are, you don't know what the leverage you can pull to change things.
I hope the camera got that. Did everyone hear it?
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons, by the way, I am not a fan of the regular probability field or other bits either, because without context, a number is not going to be as meaningful. But one of the aspects is we can build different levels of detail that could feed into a probability without over-indexing. Thank you for such a comprehensive answer, and I do agree with every point you made. And if I didn't, I would let you know too. So one of the things this example comes from is we looked at what did we learn, both as humans and based on what our data was telling us. What was common about opportunity dates being pushed out consistently. And what we identified was if certain things were not happening, the opportunity date was likely to get pushed out. For example, if we did not have an NDA in place, it didn't matter when the opportunity date was. If it was a late stage opportunity, it was probably not going to close. If next steps were not captured, well, maybe it would close, maybe someone has the NDA in their email, but we couldn't know as an organization. So we started embracing the idea that by analyzing data, tying it to specific contextual insights based on the life cycle of an opportunity, by looking at what's happening at an individual record, we could be smarter about whether this automatically populated drop-down value was indicative, but what mattered wasn't the percentage, what mattered was being able to tell per opportunity what critical information was missing that would prevent it from getting to the next level. One of the reasons I like this example, and that was the best answer I heard, by the way, when I posed the question, is we have to understand the business context in any decision we are making. So I didn't use the word AI in that entire example. We are going to build into how to deliver such solutions because our goal is the outcome. Let's look at a bit of a historical perspective on how technology has been evolving over the past 30 years. Anyone else that was working with technology in the 90s or 80s? A few of us in the room, right? This is when we were moving from mainframes to client server to N-tier. We had purpose-specific technologies. We had ETL engines. We were selecting what database we should store our data in. Message-oriented middleware was the new kid. And static internet pages with hand-coded web forms was what was popular. Jump into 2000s, N-tier architecture and platform as a service is the norm. Cloud computing is booming. Instead of coding what a common customer dimension in a data warehouse looks like, we now have master data management engines, and we believe, falsely it turns out, there's something called the golden record that always consistently, completely understands the customer. Data federation starts coming up to try to retrieve data real time from associated solutions, and we are embracing document management systems more and more. Go forward, 2010s, cloud solutions are no longer argued over what if the data is secure or not. Companies like Salesforce have grown, they've acquired companies that gets them into the B2C space also. Integration tools are unifying. Whereas a few years past, you would be buying a batch integration tool, a real-time integration tool, a messaging integration tool. Companies like Informatica are saying, buy the integration tool. Data science is hot. It is one of the best paid jobs, according to many articles written. Data lakes are hot because people got tired of waiting for IT, providing reliable data. Everyone wants to create their own single source of truth. In the meantime, in content management, one of the cool things is you are dynamically creating content based on the latest version of the logo, image, tying into product catalogs. So the amount of reliable content generation starts picking up. Until recently, when we are looking up to 2023, now with COVID, there's a huge push towards digital transformation. People are trying to put more and more online. Cost and complexity starts becoming a concern because profitability is questioned. Call for data unification, the many single sources of truth, leads to solutions such as Salesforce Data Cloud. MDM vendors are trying to be CDP, CDP vendors are trying to be non-marketing solutions. In the meantime, chatbots are everywhere supporting omni-channel solutions. And then, of course, in 2014, OpenAI releases ChatGPT 3.0. Peter talked about this much more elegantly. This is a massive disruption because everyone starts interacting with something. This is the equivalent of e-commerce technology raising consumer expectations. in enterprise solutions. It's what is happening in the ability to work with and take advantage of information. The worst thing that's happening also at the same time, which was already happening for the past 10 years, the ease and ability to create bad information intentionally or unintentionally skyrockets. It's not about how do you know whether what you get from ChatGPT is accurate or not, it is what you read on the internet, what is in a report, so data reliability is a massive concern. So for all of you that are accountable for outcomes or responsible for making recommendations, the challenge we have is everyone is trying to raise the efficiency because the economy is depressed. We are worried about falling behind because everyone is talking about we need to embrace AI, but technology is changing so quickly that we don't know what technologies we should use, whether we can trust information, whether we are making the right investment decisions. This is what all of us are in this session for, and I'm going to share with you my set of perspectives on this. Because history teaches us some patterns that I believe will repeat themselves, and they are already starting to repeat. If I was to say the goal of agentic AI is to enable greater efficiency, would anyone disagree with that general premise? What about the goal of predictive AI is to also increase efficiency by finding patterns faster? Same is the goal of automation workflows. What if AI is not always AI, or AI stood for something a little bit different? The way I've been thinking about this, and I was talking to a good friend of mine who runs AI innovation for Salesforce, he said they reviewed hundreds of AI agent ideas, and the vast majority of them could have been achieved with simple automation or other AI techniques. The good news is, and if you go back on the history slide, if you are a consultant or if you're a customer that had built your organization's IT structure in the past 3 to 50 years, you have some of each of those technologies which contains data, logic, buried in metadata you can actually take advantage of. So our challenge is not how do we implement agentic AI tomorrow, but it is to understand what is the business use case so we can take advantage of all of these capabilities, delivering trusted, repeatable information based on the needs of the use case. I want to pause here to see if there are any questions or reactions. So, how do you identify something to start applying these technologies? In the morning keynote, there was a question on how do you select a use case. Frankly, other than throwing a dart, you have two options. You can go bottom up if you already have an idea. Having an idea means you have a business stakeholder that knows that there's a need, that they want to be able to automate, and they are willing to come on the journey with you. The other idea is you're going to go top down. You're not going to try to solve everything, but you want to be intentional in what you're suggesting be used or not be used. Either way, evaluating whether that use case is a good fit for whichever AI flavor, the questions are going to be the same. This is a slide from 2019 when we used to guide people on the way to implement customer 360 solutions. This is going beyond MDM is by understanding your journey with the customer and deciding where to start. In 2015, I would submit to you the goal is actually exactly the same. What you want to do is decide who you want to engage. Are you trying to optimize your recruiting, your supplier relationships, your customer relationships? If it is customer relationship, pick a customer type and draw the coarsest grained customer journey you can envision from awareness all the way to adoption, growth, or attrition. The value of this is ultimately we are trying to ask a couple of key questions. What are areas with highly repeatable tasks where we can easily demonstrate delays or inconsistencies will cost real money, either by losing revenue, delaying revenue, or incurring unnecessary costs? And then, within that particular engagement point, are there specific tasks or jobs we can actually efficiently streamline? Make sense so far? Any questions? Okay. So once we do this, then the next step is you pick a moment, you describe the ideal outcome in that moment. This is the equivalent of the output in Peter's algorithm. We didn't coordinate, but I was really excited while I was watching him. You then identify which personas are influencing that moment. Because when you provide an output, someone needs to see and act upon that output. It needs to be clearly defined, otherwise we're not going to be able to answer some of the latter questions. You determine what information they need to reach that outcome. It may be a purchasing decision. It may be saying the field service repair is now complete and the customer can continue using the machinery. It may be a support case closing. And then within that you determine repeatability of the task, because if it is not highly repeatable, it's not a great case for automation. If it is repeatable, you also ask, do we need to incorporate empathy as part of the decision making? Because empathy is still not something you can build into the algorithms. Once you ask these questions, you put them in a simple table. Never have just one. If you have more than 5 to 7, it's going to be overwhelming. You want to start small enough to repeat, and then you come up with a table like this. Not knowing the audience, I picked a few different examples from a few different scenarios. So if you're a nonprofit, the first time you get a donation from someone, or you think it's the first time you get a donation from someone, you want to send them a thank you. Automation can help you determine, is this the first time you've seen them, because majority you want to put them on matters if it's a first time engagement or they donate annually. I love United, I've flown with them for a couple of million miles, but every time I renew my 1K status, I get a congratulations on becoming a 1K. I'm like, can't you just see if I was a 1K at least last year and say congratulations for renewing your 1K? That would make me feel a bit more understood, right? Real example. But your message you send can then be generative about what you know about the person. If they respond, how you manage the response can be agentic. And this is, by the way, probably 3 phases of a project where what we want to do is we want to nurture that relation into a longer-term donor. What I highlighted is the moment we would normally encompass this under a broader use case. Now, if you're doing marketing segmentation, I want to define what markets are effective. I'm probably starting with some level of analytics, some level of predictive intelligence. I want to see my patterns. Quality of the training data set is going to be important. And once I figure this out, I can see how I can apply further automation downstream. But at a super high level, the way I'm approaching marketing segmentation, dealing with massive amounts of data, is very different than I'm engaging with one record at a time that's more transactional. Hopefully resonating. And then let's imagine a retail scenario. Raise your hand if you ever bought something online. And then keep your hand up if something happened to that order that you didn't want. Keep your hand up if you tried to reach out to customer service and did not have a great experience. Awesome. So, this is one of the most easy to break down and explain pieces, because when you can play pretend and think about what were those moments that could have been improved, every single one of those moments is a micro project phase that you can put in place by identifying the outcome you want to achieve, the information you need to be able to guide to that outcome, and build a solution. So you can start with predictive. There is a storm and a bunch of shipments are going to be delayed. Send an email alert saying, do you want to cancel if it's not perishable, or how do you want to get an update? Depending on your response, if someone is reaching out to customer service, recognize that your customer service automation and your delayed order follow-up flows may need to be related to each other. So this is one of the powers of looking at your processes or customer journeys end-to-end while being able to execute moment by moment. Make sense, hopefully? Any questions? Yes, sir.
I would put a bit more nuanced view on it. Okay? Hold on. No, I'll be loud enough. Okay. If you're talking about what you're talking about, you're talking a very broad consumer, and you're treating everybody equally. If you really want to look at it from an agentic perspective, why not be very highly personalized? You provide a higher quality of service to very specific targeted individuals or such that much have a higher lifetime value and potentially repeat. And if it's somebody new, maybe you offer it because it's a new customer, but if someone's a low-value customer, why do you give a crap? It maybe cost you more to serve and to build the implementation to support them. So I think you look at the data of who your customers are, understanding your customers, look at that, and then build a bell curve associated with that, and look where you're going to target your resources to be able to solve, and you'll have a much higher repeat business for people that are far more profitable, particularly if you're looking at profitability of the products that they buy.
Were everyone able to hear the answer? Now I'm gonna amend to it. It's not just what they spent with you, it is their propensity to buy based on additional information you may get. Well, it's not just lifetime value, because lifetime value is past transactional habits. It's also what you know about that demographic, and if you want to foster the relationship with that demographic to not lose potential large customers in the future. This is the reason we need to look at this as broader solution architecture, by the way, and many of the slides on the stack we can probably do distinct talks also. I will touch upon that specific example in about 15 slides. Lots of slides. So the thing to remember here, each idea can be broken down into individual, distinct, business valuable steps. So in terms of planning your AI initiative, no matter what you're going to do, a key question you need to answer is, do I have the data I need for this initiative to be successful? And if I don't, can I produce it? So I want to tell a story, and this is a story with my father who turned 90 recently. He's a retired brigadier, he's a military engineer, he is used to being given a mission, and you happen to discover what tools you have to get the mission done. And part of his gift, when he turned 90 was, he wrote a book of his memories, which I didn't realize until after I put the book cover in this image, how relatable it is to what we're talking about. There's an old man looking at a store carrying a baby, with the sunrise or sunset, we don't know the time of day, because we don't know if this is the end or beginning of a new era. But he was asking me, so explain to me what this AI thing is. So we interacted with ChatGPT, and I gave it the prompt, describe my father's name, a retired soldier. Didn't provide any more details, branch, rank, etc. And we got an answer on what his rank was. When you're a general, you're probably a little better known in the public space. Where he went to school from a military academy, that was it. Then I said, what else you can share about him? He's written books on poetry after he retired. He was involved in the industry. So we got a little more details. He's like, oh, this is interesting, where does it know? Okay, it makes sense, like I know that I had written things. Then I said, what do you know about his son? So these are the actual prompts. And then ChatGPT says, I don't know who his son is. So my dad goes, so why doesn't he know that we are related? And I said, because government records on parent-child relationships is not public domain. So it's not going to know just because we may have the same names that we are related to create that relationship. And being a military engineer of how parts fit in a tank, a gun, a submarine, in a bridge, he's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Which, by the way, was a 20-minute conversation drinking cognac that may be a 3-month conversation with an organization. They are still trying to understand why you may need a data platform to achieve enterprise AI solutions, rather than why don't we just see if we can build something as enterprise AI that build your own piece. You will hear that I do not prefer build your own AI as a P&L leader, by the way. But maybe that's a story for you. So, moral of the story, data and the technology we are using to achieve outcomes matter. So we're going to talk a little bit about the data first and technology. At the end of the day, and I should get to know the 007 laptop's name, because we're going to engage more, I'm sure. Andy, awesome. Yep. We will interact more. This is one of the things people need to understand. We can have AI technologies just on unstructured data, right? Your typical ChatGPT, you're dumping your documents, it's doing internet research, you're dumping multimedia, it's essentially that. It is pretty cool, it's valuable. You can have deterministic AI by throwing in customer or transactional data. And of course, if your customer data is disconnected, you're going to have issues. Enterprise AI means you know when unstructured data relates to a customer, which knowledge article relates to products a customer might have purchased, what you know about customer's history, when all of these things can be served in a trusted, contextual, secure environment. So part of the journey as we think about the roadmap is understanding exactly where things go and assessing the risk. And in most organizations, data does not live in just one application. Even if it did, they are distributed across records. We need to unify this. The good news is, even though every organization I've ever encountered with, my own included, has some level of data challenges, when you ensure the information you need for a specific business outcome is complete, consistent, current, correct, contextual, and compliant enough for that use case. It doesn't matter what flavor of AI you're thinking about, you're going to have the right foundation. So this is not going to be an effort that is going to be wasted. If you're a data professional like I am, this is one of the best times to deliver value to organizations across the initiatives in a rapid way. So in my perspective, there are 5 things we can identify that indicate a level of risk for AI hallucination in organizations. Number 1 is incomplete understanding of the customer. I have now seen demos and keynotes that talk about do not send the customer an order when you have an open case and they are frustrated, yet 15 years later we are still dealing with that exact same challenge. If the records are disconnected, there are quantifiable ways of assessing it. Your personalized AI is not going to be as personalized. Number 2, do you know when you have missing data? It may be missing records, it may be missing data in fields. Not every field, not every record is as actionable as another. Once you determine what fields you can rely on, and yes, this is a structured data perspective, but I believe in enterprise AI, structured data matters for those personalized interactions, you need to be mindful of certain metadata, because this is where you're classifying sensitivity, and when you work with reasoning engines, this is where reasoning engines are identifying where else they can go and fetch the data if you did not configure prompts explicitly with those fields. 2 other items in a traditional information lifecycle management challenges. If you put out-of-date data, whether structured or unstructured, it's going to skew your results. And if you do not monitor your data trends and metadata for change, the system may break and you never knew that there was a leak in the pipeline. Just going through this is normally a talk on its own. I'm going to go through some of the slides quickly and invite you to connect with me if you ever want to geek out on any of the details. Couple of the nuggets I want to leave you with is when we are engaging with an individual, because systems still do not send messages to companies, they send messages to individuals. We need to be clear who we are engaging it with and what are we supposed to know. I often bring this example and say, are these duplicate records? In a typical system, there are probably like 50 records for me, but if these were 2, and if you don't have an opinion, that's fine. Raise your hand if you think they are duplicates. Raise your hand if you don't think they are duplicates. Raise your hand if it depends. So for the last 20 plus years, organizations have been obsessed with the idea that we need to eliminate duplicates and merge things as much as possible, not realizing what's more important is to be able to deliver contextual information to a distinct persona when and where they need it. So if someone wants to engage with me based on what I'm doing at PureNova, my Salesforce transactional history or unstructured activity history should not be a part of this, other than perhaps knowing I came from Salesforce and it is an attribute of me as an individual. If you're on the technology side and you're thinking about your data architecture, we need to think about engagement with individuals versus engagement with business context. And these are the type of solutions you're going to need to think about. The good news is, as you analyze structured data content, which is a lot easier to do still, unstructured data technologies are fast evolving, you can quickly see what is the data pattern, how often do I see low level of uniqueness. For example, we think this is somebody's personal business phone. It's only unique 40% of the time. It probably means we inherited it from the company record. You can come up with record designs by identifying what fields are no longer being used and then focusing on what fields are reliably populated recently, you can narrow the scope for any analytics or AI technology to fields more likely to provide value. Of course, there's a contextual depth. By looking at the data content behind the fields and identifying how many fields are always populated, but they only seem to have one unique value only, you can identify what you may eliminate. And to give you a real number, I was working with a customer, advising them, and they had 589 fields in one object alone. And it turns out they could only use 73 fields reliably. And we were able to identify it in a number of hours, applying well-established data profiling, data management techniques. So data content, data readiness matters before we decide what to do. The reason metadata matters is in enterprise solutions, Salesforce Agentforce is a good example of this. It's going to use configure prompts and it's going to try to guess what you're trying to do based on metadata available. So if you have a field called score with no description, it's not going to know what it is. And it may either use it incorrectly or it may not use it, which would also be a bad outcome. So, and then the last bit is you can quickly and easily see out-of-date data that you may choose to archive, purge, or just remove from or not feed into your RAG, your cloud-based databases, whatever technology you're using. Not just for data reliability, but we are in an increasing consumption-based model today. Every bit of not necessary data you feed into a solution is costing you money while you are still not using it. So, for the sake of time, let's talk a bit about technology options. I'm going to speed up because I want to make sure we have time for Q&A. When you're planning your AI initiative, these are the 5 phases I am observing organizations going through. What is dominant right now is what I'm calling standalone unstructured data for a chatbot or generative AI experience. You're giving a bunch of data, it's not personalized, you're getting prompts, they can be well written or poorly written. Valuable, I use these, it didn't know I wasn't Dwayne Johnson, but still super efficient. It is easy to get into, low barrier to entry. Then there are solutions that are dealing with application metadata. Because it's not data, it's not considered as sensitive. This is helping people better configure, better code, better test. But in of itself, this does not generate tangible, significant business value. The fun journey is on the right side. What can we do within a business application about a customer or a supplier or a vendor? How can we do it even better when that data is unified in the application, and even better when we combine it with unstructured data and data from other systems as well? This is where we are all trying to move, whether you're a consultant or a company, and this is why I think people come to sessions like this for the brainstorm. My personal belief on technology is platform players are going to be the winner, and I don't consider AWS or GCP a platform player in this case, by the way. They are technology toolkit providers. In the 80s, we had batch tools, data warehouses, operational reports. These were all standalone. Just building this quickly, things started coming together. Integration tools unified things. Marketing-focused CDPs brought master data management type capabilities for the benefits of the marketers. Modern analytics like Tableau started providing an NLP natural language interface to interpret results. What we are talking about now is modern platforms are bringing in unstructured data databases, identity resolution, structured and unstructured data handling, workflow, real-time data lookup into the architecture. And while any one capability within may not be as good as something else I can buy and integrate today, my perspective, the rate of change happening in individual tools is so high that I am personally betting on the platform plays. The way it looks right now is, if we look at some of the examples, we have traditional marketing CDPs in this space, as well as the business application providers that did enterprise solutions. If you look at some of the key capabilities, you're seeing much of what we need to wire are being implemented to a degree. Larger companies are also buying smaller companies. So this is something to be mindful of in general, in the way we're looking at things. I know I sped up my thinking. Am I still making sense in the pace I'm going? Great. By the way, I spent a lot of time with Salesforce's technology and not time with the others, so if you want to ask me questions about it after the break, I'm happy to answer, or during Q&A, but this is a more comprehensive way of looking at it because it's a non-commercial session. So we talked about use case selection, data readiness assessment, a perspective on how you can go after technology. Let's talk about the other factors that would make agents successful, because agentic solutions, working with automation, distributed APIs, etc., is part of what we are doing today. I'm going to focus on the example of support triage in customer service. Why? Because this is automation as well as agentic potential. This may require empathy, which means it cannot be fully automated. But a lot of things can actually be streamlined, including generative AI summarizing past case history, including data unification to know what do we know about this customer, their order history, and then being able to route it to a human when it is called for. These are 4 areas that you can look at. Salesforce actually has a free trail on this that I recommend. It will take you 15 minutes to complete. It is non-technical. You need to identify where you want the agent to engage, when that agent should hand off, what are the conditions. If there is routing logic from one channel to the other, because it may start on the chat, it may switch to a phone, you want to not lose any of the data, otherwise you lose the efficiency benefits anyway. And also what data it is supposed to know about and act on. Because the security rules for an agent is different than security rules for an employee or a customer. You need to think of agents in a given task as if they're a distinct role in your design. For more details, take the trail. It goes into all of these 4 buckets. The thing that's going to be most important for the companies that are getting ahead is going to be the human factor. And I submit to you there are 3 types of humans I worry about when I think about rolling out AI. Customer is one, because if they think the way we are trying to be efficient is actually at their expense, it doesn't matter that we are more efficient, we are going to lose customers, unless we are intentionally trying to weed some out, to Andy's point earlier. Executives trust, acceptance and embrace is going to be important, because no one has unlimited funds. We are all writing checks based on what we believe would happen. So we need to understand how any initiative ties to a tangible business value outcome, and why we think this is the best alternative today that is going to be extensible into the future. And for our employees, which is all of us also, by the way, whose jobs are being impacted, we need to support them with the type of not just technical skills, but empathy training, so we all understand where we are in the journey, because it is disruptive. At the end of the day, though, the key question is, who are we empowering, when, why, and how? And how would we know if we are doing it well and successfully? In conclusion, to have time for Q&A. Allure of AI is real, complexities are real. What we need to do is learn from the past on how we can apply these into the future. Experimentation, because it is so easy right now, is something that you should embrace and get going, but do not forget the human factors in technology funding. Before we do the Q&A, I want to call out one thing that is off agenda. So I'm here then rushing back home for my birthday, and every year I pick a nonprofit because giving back matters. This is a time nonprofits are struggling. And we can talk about all of the causes to help in all the problems in the world, but early childhood education and learning to me is what matters the most. When we want to give human beings the ability to be self-confident, to learn, to challenge ideas, for critical thinking. So I chose the Chicago-based nonprofit called Start Early that operates nationally. If you're willing to give back, great. If you are not able to give back, taking care of yourself before helping others is a really, really important factor. I just wanted to mention this also because it's a learning culture. With that, I got my 10-minute warning, so we can have 10 minutes for Q&A. And thank you for listening.